Getting tilted over my own mistakes. This requires a little bit of self-awareness, because why do you get tilted over your own mistakes?
Well, because I feel like I should be playing at a level that I'm not playing at. That's really like after like a couple games, and then I fucking just grief it for like 2 games in a row, and I'm just like, what am I doing? I'm completely out of it. And I then maybe because I made like a really, really stupid mistake, I'm like, nah, this is not it for today. And then I kind of just run it down sometimes. And I'm not literally run it down, but I just keep making mistakes, and that really tilts me.
Right. So what goes through your mind in that moment? Because you already said like, oh, like, what am I doing? But what is the image of yourself? So what is your ego telling you, right?
I'm the
So
fucking worst player on the server, yeah.
okay, I am the
Yeah.
worst player on the server. So then that's the image you have of yourself in that moment, right? That's your thought.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like lashing a whip at yourself. I'm the fucking worst on the entire server. What the fuck am I doing, right?
Yeah.
Um, but that awareness of itself is actually really important. Um, if you do you mind if I ask you a bit more of a personal question?
No, go ahead. Oh,
Have you? No, I'm just thinking.
no, no.
Do Have you had this in the past as well, like a younger self, where you would encounter this type of negative self-talk?
Yeah, I think so.
Do
I've had it a
you
couple times.
would you mind giving an example?
Okay, like I think what was it, 4 years ago now? I had a breakup with like one of my exes, and
Hmm.
I made a lot of mistakes, and then I really couldn't really let go of them, and that kind of halted that up for like a couple months, I think even. That really bashed me, and then slowly I got out of it, but that's something that really got tilted over, and then really got my mental state. I think what more? Elementary school, I had a couple moments where I really thought,
Let's
okay,
Yeah, let's
yeah,
pause that second example. Let's go over that first example for a moment. Um, so what was the image of yourself or the thoughts that was going through your mind when that breakup was happening?
uh, first I was like kind of confused with what's going on,
Hmm.
but then it slowly became clear, and then I realized what I did or what I didn't do actually does. Then I kind of just felt like I shouldn't be having a girlfriend. That kind of feeling.
I shouldn't have a girlfriend. And
Yeah,
more so if you were to fit in the sentence,
the worst boyfriend.
I am the worst boyfriend. Right.
That is kind of it, yeah.
How do you feel like saying that out loud and actually thinking and feeling about this?
I mean, now it's kind of whatever because I also went to therapy for this and stuff like this.
Oh, good. Great.
But back then, I think I would actually just fall down and cry. I think I
Yeah.
wouldn't be able to take it. I think.
But beautiful how you can describe it, how you can communicate it, right? And I thought
Mhm.
to hear, at least when I I was asking you to finish the sentence of I am, and you said the worst boyfriend, I thought to notice a moment of sadness or, well, pain rather.
Yeah, it
Is that
sometimes still
correct?
bothers me.
Yeah,
Yeah,
which is completely
it's
normal, right?
yeah.
Um, we can also give the elementary school example. Actually, yeah, I think, can you also give me the elementary school example?
Okay, I didn't have like a lot of friends in elementary school. It was because I was like a nerd, you know. So, and there weren't a lot of nerd people in my school. So
Hmm.
I had like one or two friends. Then sometimes when I fucked up with like one or two friends, because I'm in elementary school, I'm 10, well, what do I know? Then it would feel really bothered, and I feel like I'm not really someone's friend because I did this. And then I would just sit there as a 10-year-old, just looking at my feelings and my mistakes, and that's kind of rough when you don't have a lot of friends because you can't really talk about them with someone else.
Hmm. I'm actually very sad to hear. It seems that
Yeah.
actually in multiple stages of your life, you are confronted with the internalized what's the word? The internalized, I mean, kind of like feelings in a way, right? But like you're making conclusions, or what the brain usually likes to do is if we cannot explain something like externally, um, we start trying to make sense of it by internalizing it, right? So instead of
Mm-hmm.
saying, like, oh man, like I actually, there's not really anyone around that has the same interest as me. That sucks, you know.
Mm-hmm.
That is just what it is because there's no one else. Like it's kind of the problem of your environment in a way. You could take that perspective, right? But
Mm-hmm.
instead, to make sense of that, or to have it make sense for you, because we've done this for millions of years, you know, like we
Mm-hmm.
were. Like, then we also go maybe a bit into religion, et cetera, right? But like we always made the inexplicable explainable, right? Like we would create different types of gods. It's like, oh, how does this work? Oh, the rain gods have blessed us with rain, when it's just like some chemical reaction in the sky, right? In the
Mm-hmm.
end, or what we figured out in the end. Um, but to apply that to you, as the young boy, you internalize it by saying like, oh, I am making mistakes. I am a nerd, and I am the problem in not having friends.
Yeah.
That makes sense,
Yeah, yeah, makes sense.
right?
Yeah, on top of that, I'm also like highly sensitive in my mind. So everything that's kind of going on in my brain goes at 2 times speed sometimes, and it
Hmm.
feels it's either really good or it's really bad. It sometimes feels like no in between.
And how is that for you?
Uh, it's rough,
Rough.
especially even now because like now I have like my study and I try to be with my job and I try to be communicative with my friends, but I'm also doing this. It's like sometimes I have to cut corners and sometimes it can bite me in the ass sometimes. So
Okay. Sounds like you're
it is.
working really hard.
Yeah, I'm trying my best to balance everything.
But now, if I may ask, perhaps it's a bit of a confronting question to ask. But
Go ahead.
if I am, yeah, if that's okay with you, who are you working for?
Myself, I feel like,
If
because
that
I want
is if
to
that is
do
truly the
this.
case, then that's good. But something in me tells me, or like there's like a bit of a fear that you're working really, really hard, like with your job, with your study, because League is probably kind of like your own thing, right? At least if I put it into my own experience, like I really worked hard on League and actually went into esports in the first place because it was really my thing. Um, because I was kind of like pushed into the music industry, right? Because my dad used to be a musician, and he
Mm-hmm.
wanted, like, his dream was for me to become a professional musician and get famous and blah blah blah, right? But League was my own thing, and that's where I had full control over it, right? Because like I had no one sticking their nose into my business because they didn't understand it. But for music, that was the case, right?
Mm-hmm.
So by at least having that comparison with myself to you, my fear would be is that you're working really, really hard, or that you may be working really, really hard, doing all of these extra things and steps, right? Um, to please other people, or in the end, it's to please other people because you don't want to feel that you are like a terrible person, right? Or whatever that self image is.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about that?
I mean, of course, I want to play the league all day, but I can also want to.
Yeah, but now mostly talking about the other things like your study,
Yeah,
your job, right?
I mean, I think having a job for myself is always important because having money right now is like I also want to go out and I want to do something with friends, and I don't have infinite money on my bank account, so I kind of
Right.
need to
So
work.
you're working to improve like your own quality of life.
Yeah, and also just I do fun things outside of my
Okay.
own life.
All
That's
right. I just wanted to have that check on you because this all of this can be relevant for like your, let's say, your league career, because I don't really know your ambitions around league. I know that you're quite serious about like climbing and playing in the student team, right?
Mhm.
But it's good to have a check because the both this point and the following point, like the imposter syndrome, these two are kind of connected, right?
Mhm.
So that's why I'm digging a little bit deeper and make this a little bit more personal to kind of like see how we tackle this. And I think this is the beauty of League of Legends as well. Like if we're willing to really look at it, like the things that we learn in League, at least this was the case for me. The way I got confronted in League of Legends and my career there has helped me get more self-awareness about these types of things, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
Because in the end, I also went into therapy for quite an excessive 1 second line for 8 months and 16 hours a
Oh,
week, which was like a part-time therapy when I took a break from my career 2018
wow.
or 2019 actually. Sorry.
All right. That's
So
pretty rough, actually. Yeah.
yeah, so I can I feel you basically is what I'm saying, right? And that's why I'm like having this check, and that's why I think it's at least important to have like a look at it by going a bit deeper and see what there is.
All
Because
right.
this one, to make this now bridge into League of Legends, because I don't want to make this into a therapy session, right? This is on you. But what is tilt in the end? Tilt is what we experience when we have an obsession with control and when things are going outside of our control that we're desperately trying to keep in control. That's where the snap happens. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Right. So the one thing that you then have control over, which is your own performance and your own mistakes, and once that goes out, then you get tilted, and that snap happens because I am the worst player on the server. That's then the self-image that gets activated, right? Or the image of
Mhm.
the self or the ego. Like everything related to the I is the ego. So your ego is telling you, I'm the worst player on the server. But this may also have a subconscious chain reaction to your past selves, like I am the worst boyfriend, or I am stupid because I make so many mistakes that I don't have friends in elementary school.
Mhm.
What do you think about that, or how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I think that makes sense, actually.
Right.
At least that's sometimes how it feels. And then I think about, okay, yeah, it makes sense. Because it's like really intense sometimes when I tilt.
Right. So it's this point, mm, the solution or the process of not getting tilted over your own mistakes, they might that part like that work, that intent like intrinsic work may lie within actually past selves instead of your current self. Right. So this is something that you may let me think how to say this, because it's quite a heavy subject, right? So I notice that
Yeah.
I'm struggling a little bit in how to tackle this, or how to say this, or how to progress in this.
I get it. I get it.
Possibly we can solve this within league already, and that may be your exercise, and I think that is the help that I can give you at least. But if there's still unresolved karma, so it be, so kind of like unresolved actions to be taken, because that's what it means from your past or former self, where that self-image still pops up very strongly, and it is actually, maybe I should ask this question: does that negative self-talk limit you or make your daily life and your daily tasks more difficult?
Not really. I think only with League of Legends it makes it worse.
Only in League of Legends. Okay, then
Only
that,
League of Legends.
then maybe that is a good sign, because then you can actually solve it through League of Legends of itself. It's just that because the beauty about when we are very competitive around anything that is like with winning or losing or like this type of battleground, because in League of Legends and in these competitive games we get into this very primitive part of our brains. We actually get in our reptilian brains,
Mm-hmm.
because what you're playing on and what players are experiencing when they're playing is like fight and flight reactions, right, which are very primitive functions of the brain. So this getting tilted also happens in your primitive or stems in your primitive in your reptilian brain.
Mm-hmm. I see.
So we go back to our very own default mode that is quite subconscious, but the things that we have like in from our past, like from our childhood, or like things that we've experienced, are kind of like connected in that way, right? So this feeling of this getting tilted, even though you have resolved, let's say, past either past traumas or negative experiences, you can still encounter them in this way. So then now we have to take the step on getting aware of that, and then actually like working on this bit. Anyway,
Mm-hmm.
to not make the story too long, and to then bridge into the next point, this tilted part is finding acceptance in that you cannot always be your best, and that you will make mistakes. That mistakes are inevitable, they will happen, and you will have bad games. You cannot prevent that, no matter what you do, right? And that's just simply part of the process.
Mm-hmm.
And instead of wanting to gain more control over that, the solution is actually to let go of that control, to be okay to not be in control. And paradoxically, that actually gives us a lot more control, because we have acceptance in that, and we're okay with it. And then we're actually a lot more in control because we let go of the control.
That makes sense.
Right. So the reason I go very in depth on this point already is because it's also related to the imposter syndrome. Because what happens is your ego is telling you, I'm the worst person on the server, or like the worst player on the server. And also, to take the breakup as an example, I'm the worst boyfriend, right? Because so you're
Mm-hmm.
basically gaslighting yourself. And that's where imposter syndrome comes from. And I know how this works because this is something I still sometimes struggle with myself, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because of my past experience in my life, and how this also ties into basically how my career is developing, right? Because it's a big
Mm-hmm.
part of my identity. And once that big part of your identity falls in shambles, it's like glass, right? Like if there's a dent and it breaks, then suddenly our whole identity is crushed. Does it make sense to
Yep.
you?
Yeah, that makes
So
sense.
then that's where the imposter syndrome comes from, um, because probably this is what happens, right? So you already get tilted about your own mistakes, but let's say you then get into a winning streak, because there is still this little seed inside of you that is still blooming of like, oh, I am the worst person, or like the worst player on the server. And then suddenly you get into a winning streak, and suddenly you get like into high diamond or masters or something. It's like, how the fuck did I actually end up here? Like I'm the fucking worst player on the server. There's no way that I am like fucking master level.
Yep. Right
You're
there.
laughing, so I'm assuming this is basically what
Yeah,
happens.
this is what happened because I
Right.
climbed it like a month, and I was like hard stuck emerald for like 11 months of like whole last year, and then the last month when we had Christmas break, I just fucking grinded my ass off, and then I got into master tier. I'm like, I'm what am I doing here? Like what? These people are 10 times better than me, and I just feel like I don't know what I'm doing, you know?
Yeah, and you're still stuck in Emerald right now?
I'm Emerald 1. I got the
Emerald
Diamond
1.
4 last
Okay.
thing, but then I tilted a bit, so now I'm Emerald 1 again. But
All right. So you're hovering in between right now. Okay.
yeah.
So same thing might happen again. So this is let me think how can we really tackle this, like, because this is mostly done through talking communication and just having an exercise where this happens. Let's say you do, we'll probably form goals later, but to kind of foreshadow for later is like, let's say you make a big mistake and you notice you start to get tilted or angry at yourself, then just we can do some type of breathing exercise to kind of come back to the present and learn to create acceptance towards it. Because first step is just awareness. Like if we are aware of like, oh, this is happening, you know, like I'm tilting, and the sentence I say to myself, what I thought, that the negative self-talk that comes in my mind right now is, oh, I'm the worst player on the surface. Ah, here it happens, right? And just that, here it happens, is already like a huge first step to actually resolving it or learning uh, how to work with it. Because this is something that will not never go away. Like just like people that have occurred trauma or have negative self-image or like a negative ego in that sense, right? They will always encounter this. We cannot get rid of this, like how hard that we try. But what we can do is change our relationship with it. And the more we improve that relationship with it, the easier it becomes for us to get influenced by it. So it might pop up in our mind, but we're not affected by it. And that's kind of like the sweet spot that we want to get, because that in and of itself is kind of like transcendence, right? Like it's kind of how do you say the Zen Buddhism mind, right? It's like, oh, the thought pops up, but I'm not affected by it because I have acceptance that this thought comes up, but it is not the truth. It's just a thought, or it's just a feeling. Okay, so I'm actually surprised that it only took us half an hour, like on this topic. So then, last, how to practice decision making outside of playing League. So, what decision making are you struggling with?